FATV has become a part of the fabric of our community, an integral part of our community, something that's very important to its citizens, and this bill would decimate that opportunity to provide that kind of programming to the people of Fitchburg.
There is no interest on our part to do away with local access programming. We realize what an important part of the community these services provide. So in our mind, it's really not whether to fund local access programming, it's how to fund it, how to do it fairly, and how to share those costs among multiple providers.
I'm cautiously optimistic that the bill is going to go into hiding for a while. I think it was so powerful having so many municipal leaders at the hearing. The legislators would have a hard time, I think, going against the testimony of so many elected officials. So I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to continue having the franchising process the way it is now, and hopefully our funding will remain the same.
Hello. Welcome to this special edition of Perspectives, Cable Access and Jeopardy. My name is Carl Sagal. On June 5th, Jordan Hall of the State House was packed with supporters and opponents of Senate Bill 1975, known as the Verizon Cable Franchise Bill. This bill would drastically change the way cable franchises are negotiated across the state, wresting control of negotiating municipal franchises from city and town level to state government control. The impact on local access stations, like the one you're watching, has been predicted as being disastrous. Hundreds of municipalities, their cable access stations, mayors, selectmen, state representatives, senators, and other elected officials gave solid testimony before the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy. At times, the speeches were rousing and met with both cheers and jeers. Chairman Michael Morrissey held control of both audience and testifiers, all in good spirit. In the next hour, we'll cover the municipal, Verizon, and cable access perspectives of Senate Bill 1975, better known as the Verizon Cable Franchising Bill. That's before the legislature. We'll bring you two field reports from our reporter, Alex DiNatale, on the impact of municipal and cable access level of Senate Bill 1975. The first testimonies of the hearing were made by the many municipal and elected state officials, all in agreement that taking away local control of cable franchising was not a good thing.
This is about protecting consumers, communities, and having fair competition for all. The process that is in place has worked and has worked well, and it should not be changed. I cite two expert witnesses in this regard. One is Verizon's Chief Financial Officer, Doreen Tobin, who was recently quoted as saying regarding Massachusetts, "We don't think franchising is holding us up at all at this point." And then the other is Chairman and CEO Ivan Seidenberg, who was quoted recently in Business Week as saying, with respect to Massachusetts, "We haven't been turned down any place we've gone. We have the ability to work the current system." The current system provides for a local, not just voice, but local accountability on the part of all cable providers in a very important matter of public policy. The formal packet that we have presented to you includes our written testimony for today. It includes resolutions, copies of resolutions from dozens of communities in opposition to this bill, and other background materials that will be referenced by our speakers.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Gil Hoy. I'm chairman of the Brookline Board of Selectmen. I'm here to tell you that the Board of Selectmen in Brookline unanimously opposes this legislation. Brookline, through extensive negotiations, has been able to negotiate favorable contracts for the town. Brookline, like other communities, knows what it needs and is in a far better position to undertake these negotiations. We've been able to negotiate about $2 million in payments for access purposes from our cable providers over the past 10 years. We've been able to negotiate a studio and equipment which allows us to do local programming. With the monies that we received through these contracts, we will soon be constructing a cable studio at Brookline High School, which will not only be good for local access programming, but also for our students who will have the ability to use that facility. Importantly, we've also been able to negotiate agreements whereby the cable providers have to build out the town. We don't understand why there should be support for a bill that would enable Verizon to cherry-pick the locations where it will build out. We think that local communities should have the ability to negotiate contracts whereby all of their citizens are provided with these services, and not merely those locations where the provider thinks that they will make the most money.
My name is Chris Gagnon. I'm a selectman in the town of Ashburnham, and I'm also the president of the Ashburnham Westminster Community Access Corporation, a nonprofit corporation running local access for Ashburnham and Westminster. I agree with everything that everybody is saying about defeating this bill, but I'd just like to point out that we enjoy a 4.25% pass-through amount from our current contract, which provides our studio approximately $100,000 a year to operate. If we were to be reduced to the 1% level, we would close the studio, and it is the only access for the bulk of our citizens to view what's going on in our local government and school system. Thank you.
My name is Bob Sweeney, and I'm a member of the Board of Selectmen in Stoneham. I've been on the board for 8 years, and I was the chairman during the Verizon license negotiations. I'd like to thank you for allowing me to appear in front of the committee, and I appreciate the opportunity to express in the unanimous and strong opposition of the town of Stoneham and the Board of Selectmen to the proposed legislation. Thank you.
And I think I bring a unique perspective because I'd like to debunk some of the things that are being said about local franchising and the disadvantages. In Woburn, I negotiated 2 contracts. I negotiated the Comcast contract, and about a year later I negotiated the first Verizon contract in the state. There was equal competition. Each contract that we negotiated, every company, legitimately so, was compared with, were concerned with what things other companies were providing, i.e. how much they were paying to the town. They didn't want to have to be unfairly burdened with something that another cable provider was not burdened with. So we were aware of those things. There are protections in the current laws for that purpose, and evidence and proof of that is that in Woburn we do have 3 contracts, and there's no dispute over the service. The services are being provided right now, and it's a great opportunity for people that live in the city to have that. Another thing that I'd like to debunk is the fact that the process takes too long. 6 months to 9 months is not a long period of time for a 10-year contract or longer. As many municipal representatives in this audience know, we have 3-year contracts with labor negotiations that sometimes take 2 years. So 6 months for a 10-year contract is not an extraordinary period of time. And I think that was about the average period for my experience. In Maynard, currently, we did a Form 100 for Verizon last June. We've been asking them to come to the table since June. It's a year now. It isn't the cities and towns that are holding up the process. It's Verizon, and Verizon needs to operate under the rules that we have. I think it's a great asset to cities and towns because in Woburn we've had infrastructure for not only the city, the iNet, the intranet throughout the city's facilities, but the local cable access. Mr. Chairman, I think it was you that asked the question, how has it impacted local cable access? Prior to the Verizon coming into town under the current rules and regs, our local access studio was in Stoneham. It was run by Comcast. Now it's an independent 501c3, state-of-the-art, paid for through revenue from cable receipts, and it runs out of the new Woburn High School, and it's one of the best in the state. And that's because of the process that's in place, and it provides a great asset to cities and towns so that they can unify through their young kids, through their elderly. People can get information from these local PEG channels, and I think we should preserve the process we have in place, and I thank you for the time you've given me today.
We have a map here that shows where there are Verizon franchises and where they're not. I'm from the part of the state that has more park rangers than Verizon franchises, and we are. Yeah, that's where I'm from, over there. Yeah, but not over there. Not in the Great White Way over there. So, number one, I'm concerned about if this bill passes, there's not going to be competition for that vast part of the state. I've talked to Verizon. They tell me that it's going to be town by town over many years. So what will happen is that the bill will be in effect, our current cable franchises will expire, and we'll fall under this new bill without any of the benefit of that competition that Verizon talks about. That's a real concern to me. Secondly, the idea of a 15-day, you're only allowed to review it for completeness of application. You just passed an expedited permitting bill on the state level that gave cities and towns 180 days for expedited permits. Seems that 180 days makes sense to look at for cable bills, cable contracts, which are at least as complicated as many of the other things we do. But the issue I really want to focus on is this question of local access, and what does that really mean? In many of our communities across the state, there's no longer a local newspaper, there's no longer a local radio station, there's no way for people to understand what's happening in local government. The way they know what's happening in local government is through the local community action television, watching their select board meeting, their city council meeting, their town meeting, the school committee meeting, and that's how they find out what's happening in local government. With the with provisions of this bill and what that would do with PEG access, that small d democracy would start to disappear. I'm not going to tell you I love it when I get stopped in the supermarket and chastised for the thing I said on TV the night before, because sometimes I don't love it. But it's a good thing that the citizens know what happened, good, bad, or indifferent, and now they can exert it and put it on YouTube as well, which I guess is okay too. But that kind of local viewing of what's going on in government is a good thing. On the federal level, we have C-SPAN. We can watch what's going on. On the local level, we have our own cable access, staffed by our own community volunteers who care about local government. Don't take that away by passing this bill that, quite frankly, is going to fix a problem that doesn't exist.
My name is Mark Purple. I'm the Assistant Town Manager for the town of Ashland. Ashland is a community of about 16,000 residents located in the Metro West section of the state. We have a nice mix of blue-collar, white-collar residents. We've got a growing elderly population. Many of our residents rely on local cable programming as a regular source of information about local government, education, and school functions and events. The enactment of legislation that would prohibit municipalities from effectively addressing PEG access issues in the cable licensing process would have a significant negative impact on the benefits that our residents currently receive and rely upon to stay connected to the community. A recent article in the May 25th Metro West Daily News highlights the shaky ground that Verizon cable license agreements in Southborough and Marlborough have left public access programming standing on, with no means of contractual enforcement if Verizon does not comply. Municipalities need to preserve our rights to negotiate contracts that best fit our communities. What is best for Attleboro and Braintree may not be best for Ashburnham and Boylston. Cutting local authority out of the picture is not in the best interest of our communities or our citizens. Verizon needs to play by the same rules that other cable providers have abiding by successfully for many years. They should not be allowed to cherry-pick communities based on return of investment or profit, or only offer service to select areas of a community. Other cable providers have been required to comply with full build-out under their license agreements. Verizon should not be given a free pass to offer service where and when they choose. This proposed legislation would discriminate among local cable providers, as well as restrict accountability by cable providers to communities and its citizens. All of our residents should have the same level of choices available to them, regardless of demographics or income. We receive several phone calls and emails on a regular basis from residents asking when Verizon will be coming to Ashland. We're further told when residents contact Verizon and inquire about service, they're told the town hasn't contacted Verizon yet, and they have to wait until they're invited. In the past, the town has always been the one who has been approached by cable providers seeking a license agreement, and not the other way around. Further, residents are being told by Verizon that we are preventing them from doing business there. Residents should contact their local authorities to request Verizon service. The town has issued a letter to Verizon requesting they apply for a license in Ashland, assuring them of a warm welcome so long as the community is treated as a whole and not as haves and have-nots. To date, Verizon has not taken us up on our invitation. Communities welcome competition, not discourage it. Cities and towns should have the right to negotiate with Verizon as we would with any other cable provider, not at the point of a bayonet, as this legislation would suggest. Please oppose this legislation and protect our local authority. Thank you.
One of the most surprising testimonies among the elected officials was the bill's sponsor, State Senator Stephen Panagiotakis of Lowell. His recommendation was to deliver the bill to committee for further study, a move that usually spells drastic weakening of the ability of the bill to continue.
It certainly shows the interest in the issue, and it is an important issue. A couple things of clarification. I believe it was the town manager of Arlington talked about not building out communities. There is a provision in the bill that would give the DTE commissioner the authority to set the time limits on when a community would have to be built out. So we did try to address that. Now, that might not be the perfect way in addressing it. There might be other ways that the committee finds, but I think that is a legitimate concern that I shared with them, and we tried to address in the bill. Number two, local access channeling. Let me tell you, I've had a local access program for probably 7 or 8 years now in the city of Lowell. I'm a strong supporter of local access channeling and local access programming. And that's why I thought this bill was important, for 2 reasons. It didn't give up local control. I thought it enhanced local control, because now the local municipalities wouldn't have to negotiate with cable providers. They would actually set the rates. No negotiations. So to me, you're in a stronger position if it's just you unilaterally setting something rather than negotiating. Now, we also said that's for the franchise fee and what we call the PEG fee, and that was for public, educational, governmental channeling. Right. Well, that's what it was. I wanted to make sure that there was a guaranteed revenue source, that was revenue stream that would go to public access channel. And I thought that this PEG fee would definitely do that. Now, we can argue on whether 1% is too low or not, and if we want to raise it, certainly that's important, you know, so. Oh, yeah, I mean, look, the reason I filed this bill was to bring people to the table to discuss 2 things. First of all, competition in the cable industry. Our system is about 30 years into it. The cable industry has changed dramatically over that period of time. It's no longer a mom-and-pop type of enterprise. We really need to relook, reevaluate our regulatory scheme, number 1. And number 2 is promoting and ensuring cable, local public access channeling. And I thought that, you know, by providing a certain revenue stream, by giving the local municipalities control over setting that, not negotiating it, setting it, that would do that. Now, again, we can argue about, you know, whether the 1% is high enough or not, and if they want to, you know, raise the cap, that's fine. I'm not wedded to it. But I think it begins the discussion. It gets everybody to the table, and that's what it's done here today, certainly, and has for the last few months since the bill's been filed. Because I think all of us can agree cable competition is good for the consumers, and it's good for Massachusetts. We have some competition. One of the panelists before me said there were 50 towns or 50 cities and towns that have competition in it. Well, that means there's 301 that don't. You know, and it's been a system that's been in place for over 30 years. So it's a system, quite frankly, that allows for competition but really doesn't encourage it or enhance it. And I think what we need to do is look towards developing a system that does 2 things. Enhances competition, because with competition you're going to get cheaper prices, you're going to get better services, and you're going to get the latest technology faster. And we have to set up a system that will make sure that local access channeling will be secure and vibrant in our communities. It's very, very important to have that there. So I think this committee has a wonderful opportunity with this bill, and certainly building on today, to set up either a task force, a subcommittee, a committee on the whole, to go out and really do a fact-finding mission, because there's been a lot of arguments, pro and con, with regards to the bill, and I think you really need to sift through all of it to find out what is fact and what is fiction, and then develop the rationale that you think is important public policy for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to undertake and enact when it comes to cable television. You know, you get that opportunity is before you today. I think this committee, certainly with your expertise and the work you've done already, could certainly build upon that and get us a cable bill, I think, that will allow for the two areas that I talked, the fundamental motivations here, competition and local access channeling. Thank you very much. And I didn't get hit. Don't worry, I'll make it. Thanks a lot.
State senators and state representatives seem to then take Senator Panagiotakis' cue and work to move the bill into a state of limbo or out of the legislature altogether.
I come here today because I've been inundated quite a bit from local officials, mayors, selectmen. I know my cable guy from Woburn's here, the town council from Stoneham, town of Reading's over here, my town manager. Every one of them has sent us out letters in opposition to this bill. I've looked at this bill very closely, and when I look at the bill, I think that there are some problems. There's no doubt about it, and I think that's why we're here today. You know, I think that the idea of competition is what we want to see across the state. I know Woburn was one of the very first ones to have RCN, Comcast, and Verizon, and has worked out very well. We've had a great relationship with all three of them, and you know, they've been able to come to the town, the city, and talk to us about what they needed in our city, and things have worked very well in that manner. Well, I think that, you know, and I know my cable guy's here today, so hopefully he'll maybe get up and talk about this, but I think that clearly from talking to him that his feelings are that if the bill is to go forward and be passed, that the city of Woburn would not be able to operate on the money that they would receive going forward if it went to the state level. So that is a huge concern, and I think that's why, you know, the sponsor of the bill, Senator Pangiatakos, I am aware is going to ask to send us to study at some point, because I think there are problems with the bill. Clearly, we're hearing from the local level that they want some control in this process. In that process, you know, they're able to come back to the cities and towns and say to us, hey, look, you know, what do you need there? And the cities and towns and the cable providers are able to say, hey, we need this. So I think there's some problems. I think we're all open for competition. Myself, quite honestly, and everybody sitting in here, my cable bills are already too high as far as I'm concerned. So anything that would bring in more competition to lower the rates would be great for all of us. But I do think that in terms of the local level, we do need to have some type of say in this matter. And, you know, the questions become, how do we do that? How do we achieve that? Is there some role for the state to play in this? I'm not sure, and that's why that from my end, I know that, again, that there's going to be a request to send this out to a 90-day study. So I think that maybe all the parties can get together in some manner and figure out what makes sense for everybody on the local level and on the state level. So, you know, I wanted to kind of throw my 2 cents in. I think it's important that, you know, we slow down a little bit, take a look at this bill, and find out the good aspects of the bill and the bad ones, and find something that makes sense for everybody. So that's where I am on that. Thank you.
I will be very brief. I will submit my written testimony. I'm just here to show my opposition to this bill because it limits local control and the ability to negotiate benefits. I've been a member of SCAT, the Somerville Cable Access Television, for a long time. And I have seen the benefits that it has provided to our community in terms of building community and engaging people who are not normally involved in political or civic affairs. There is programming from every aspect of the community, from young people to old people to all the immigrant groups. I think it's an important contribution to our community, and I'm concerned about this bill because it would not only prevent other communities from negotiating those benefits, but it would prevent Somerville from maintaining those benefits when the current franchises expire. So I hope that the committee will join me in opposing this bill. Thank you very much.
If you're a regular viewer of C-SPAN, as I am, you've most likely watched many congressional hearings and testimonies. In every one of these legislative dramas, a star usually arises with a dramatic or heartfelt oration. Sometimes a slip-up or gaffe is the memorable moment or soundbite. At the hearing for Massachusetts Senate Bill 1975, a mayor, Joseph Curtatone of Somerville, was one testifier that stepped up and stood out. Alex DiNatale is in Somerville, where she had the opportunity to speak with Mayor Curtatone about his testimony. Alex?
Thank you, Carl. As president of the Massachusetts Mayor Association, Mayor Joseph Curtatone of Somerville led the opposition at the hearing in Boston against the Verizon bill. In his second term as mayor, Joe Curtatone has continued an aggressive revitalization effort for Somerville that included effective cost-cutting measures while making improvements in the health, safety, and appearance of Somerville's neighborhoods and business districts. Mayor Curtatone sees access to the city's cable television for both young and old as vital.
This issue is very sensitive for Somerville, particularly because we consider ourselves the birthplace of cable competition. We are the first city in the country to have a non-profit cable access station, Somerville Community Access Television, SCAT, and the first city in the country to have true cable competition when Somerville negotiated a second cable provider contract with RCN in 1997. So This is a history we're proud of, and certainly has done a lot to make the city more open, government activities more transparent, more accountable, and has provided a true voice of democracy and expression for the entire community.
When discussing the Verizon cable franchising bill, Mayor Curtatone is pinpoint precise in his opinion.
Let's be clear, this is not about competition. Verizon has approximately 50 current license agreements in place and another dozen or more ready to be executed. And they have a standing invitation from approximately 50 more communities, including Somerville. In fact, we invited and offered Verizon the opportunity to come into Somerville last year, Mr. Zukowski to be specific, an opportunity to come to Somerville and execute an expedited franchise agreement. Their intention is not to address the issue of competition. Their intention is to try to circumvent the process, to have a process that is streamlined for Verizon. It's not about predictability and clarity. Predictability and clarity should service the constituency first. So they want to take and gut out a long-standing, well-proven methodology to negotiating these franchise agreements for Verizon's bottom line, and that's it. It has nothing to do with the rights or the abilities of the constituents in this Commonwealth.
For Perspectives, I'm Alex DiNatale.
Thank you, Alex. Again, as any regular viewer of C-SPAN would, I'm sure you'll appreciate Somerville Mayor Joe Curtatone's entire testimony against Senate Bill 1975 before the Joint Committee on Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy.
I'm the Mayor of Somerville, Joe Curtatone. I'm proud to speak before you. Thank you, Chairman Morrissey, Senator Tucker, Chairman Dempsey, Representative Kame, and the distinguished members of the Joint Committee. We are proudly referred to as the birthplace of cable competition, the first community to have a nonprofit cable access station established in the 80s, SCAT, the first city in the country to establish cable competition when we renegotiated a franchise license with RCN. So we're very well aware of the benefits of competition. And we're not here just to knock Verizon. We all recognize Verizon as an important corporate partner here in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. They employ thousands of people. They play an important philanthropic role for many nonprofits, for many needy causes, and their leadership in this Commonwealth should be commended for that. However, I'm excited about the opportunity to address this committee about the Verizon Special Interest Bill, because that's what it is. It's a proposal that would gut local cable licensing and replace it with a largely unregulated, unsupervised, and unaccountable, one-size-fits-all state licensing process. I mean, the very fact that this legislation has been written by a single corporation, is designed to benefit a single corporation, should be enough to make the legislature and the public extremely skeptical about the value of the bill and the motives of its corporate sponsor. But I mean, this proposal is not simply another regrettable example of corporate welfare. It is, in fact, an effort to free Verizon from any accountability to the communities and consumers it serves, or just as likely that it wishes to avoid serving. Now, Verizon has claimed that the current cable licensing process is too lengthy and too cumbersome. Yet they already possess nearly 50 licenses in Massachusetts, or in the process of getting another dozen more. And they have a standing invitation, Mr. Chairman, from nearly 50 communities in the Commonwealth, right here, including Boston and Somerville, to begin immediate negotiations to establish additional license agreements across the state, and we will submit that for the record as well. But despite its past success and its future prospects, Verizon still says it isn't willing to continue under the current system. And unlike other cable TV providers, Verizon wants the freedom to serve some portions of a community and ignore other portions. It wants the freedom to ignore commitments negotiated by other providers, such as Comcast, RCN, to underwrite community access television and provide cable drops to important public buildings like schools or senior centers. And in return for these and many other concessions, for what is essentially a literally rubber stamp or to be able to write its own ticket, Verizon offers the promise of increased competition and lower cable rates. But you'll find out and you'll hear that in too many cases, this promise is an empty one. Because despite all its claims of open competition and its expensive ad campaigns, Verizon simply has no intention of serving many Massachusetts cities and towns for the foreseeable future. Mr. Chairman, I am very proud again to serve as the mayor of the city that led the nation in developing a policy of open competition among cable providers. If Verizon were serious about competition, they would already be operating in Somerville. The fact that they are not, and that you do not wish to, speaks volumes about the vast gulf between their propaganda and the reality of what they hope to extract from the citizens of this Commonwealth. As Mayor of Somerville and the president of the Massachusetts Mayor Association and the chairman of the association's telecommunications task force, I urge this committee and the entire general court to reject this blatantly self-serving bill. I and my fellow city officials look forward to discussing this issue with you and your colleagues over the next several weeks, and I thank you for your time this morning.
When we return, Verizon officials have their say right here on Perspectives.
What we would attempt to do and what we work to do is work with our peers in the industry and make sure that, for instance, we could connect our network to theirs. So the same local selectmen's meeting in East Longmeadow, is put out on Wednesday nights, that it would show up on the Comcast network as well as the Verizon network. And so, those kind of things, and matching the channels. So in East Longmeadow, if you have 3 channels, we come in, you'd get 3 channels from us.
Throughout our state, local control of cable works. It means 95% of Massachusetts homes have access to cable. Local control means schools and libraries, police and firehouses, and some nonprofits like Boys and Girls Clubs get free service. That's why officials across the state support keeping it local. But some want to take away local control of cable TV and give it to corporate executives. Visit this website to learn how you can help keep local control.
This bill was intended to provide a funding stream, of 2 parts: 5% franchise fee set by the community, up to 5%, and an additional capital fee of up to 1%, again set by the community. So I frankly don't know how people are mixing the two. If that's a drafting mistake, I will tell you quite clearly, it was meant to be 2 funding streams, meant to total 6%, and meant to be set by the communities.
Next on the docket of testifiers was the management of Verizon.
The reason why we're supporting this legislation is we feel there's a better way to do cable franchising in the Commonwealth. And we're very proud of the investments that we make with our employees and our technological resources here in the state. And since 2002, Verizon has invested just in Massachusetts over $3 billion of new technology investment. And last year alone, in 2006, we invested $600 million. Ours is a union-built network with qualified, technically skilled employees supporting this network. We think competition works in Massachusetts, and in the communities that we are at in Massachusetts, what we're seeing is real consumer savings, anywhere from $10 to $30, depending upon if a consumer is purchasing cable TV or a wide range of packages. When you think about not having that kind of competition in Massachusetts, even at a savings of about $10 per month, in an average community of about 10,000 citizens, there's hundreds of thousands of dollars that could be saved by consumers every single year. We know that local governments want competition, and we've worked with many of the cities and townsfolk. As you know, we have negotiated in good faith in 49 cities and towns where we have franchises, and this year alone, we're continuing to work on 19 more. But we can't be everywhere all at once doing this individually. And our experience shows us, while we have these wonderful communities like the Marions, Mattapoisets, Rochesters, that were able to do it in 3 months, and the Arlingtons and the Franklin, my hometown, in 7 months, 6 or 7 months, the average in Massachusetts is 15 months to get a cable franchise. That's way too long. Why do you think this happens? Well, our experience is we're dealing with these wonderful people, many volunteers, people are getting elected, different cycles of turnover in cities and towns. Priorities change, and therefore this negotiation typically isn't the top priority. Meanwhile, while we're doing this in Massachusetts, there have been 13 states in the nation that cover 60% of the population in this country that have changed and reformed their laws. What they've said is there's a better way to do this. And what they said, this is a way to draw investment, jobs, and talent to their region. Each and every year, Verizon Massachusetts competes within Verizon USA, if you will, for capital investment. And so the laws that govern these types of abilities to enter into new markets are critically important. Let me give you a couple of examples. In Florida, in one fell swoop, legislation that was signed this year alone, Verizon now has the ability to reach 1.5 million cable customers. In New Jersey, legislation was passed last year, and Verizon, by the end of this year, is able to go into 200 cities and towns. Most of the states throughout the country have varying lengths of time for their cable franchises. The average is usually less than 45 days. And as you know, the FCC came out with a recommendation of approximately 90 days, although Massachusetts was exempt from that because we had laws on the books. We really believe this legislation delivers consumer benefits. But at the same time, while we in Massachusetts are striving to pick up this economy and looking for new jobs, we feel we'll have an added advantage for new investment. We really believe Massachusetts lawmakers and the industry can work together to reform these laws. These reforms can and will continue to support local access programming. There is no interest on our part to do away with local access programming. We realize what an important part of the community these services provide. So in our mind, it's really not whether to fund local access programming, it's how to fund it, how to do it fairly, and how to share those costs among multiple providers. So again, on behalf of the 14,000 employees in Massachusetts, I want to thank you for your time and your interest in helping us change cable franchising laws in Massachusetts.
During the testimony, corporate lobbyists were placed in key areas of the room where they could intercept committee members as they both came and went from the multiple hearings schedule that they have on any given day, or coming and going from a break in the testimony. At the conclusion of the Verizon testimony were union leaders of the Verizon workforce, always a possibility for controversy and edgy soundbites.
There was an organization here today, Mass Municipal Association, that wants to take healthcare negotiations and put them in the GIC in the state. They want to take pension negotiations from our workers and put them in the PRIM board. This is the same company that doesn't want statewide negotiations about cable. This is the same group that holds police and firefighters and teachers and public workers hostage because they can't strike, sometimes taking a year, 2 years, 3 years, and 4 years to negotiate a contract. I respectfully request that you support this legislation and allow for these services to be delivered from cradle to grave by union workers. Thank you.
On behalf of over 10,000 IBEW unionized workers in this Commonwealth that work on Verizon telecommunications equipment, the competition here to us is the competition we have with our brothers and sisters in 12 other states that we're fighting for dollars to build this. And right now, we're at an impasse where we just lost 120 jobs to Rhode Island, who didn't do a statewide franchise, but they did almost like a county-wide franchise. And this has to stop. As President Haynes said, we represent over 10,000 workers that have the best wages and benefits in the industry. I dare anybody else in the industry to try to touch them. They can't. So if you would please vote this out favorably, we would appreciate it. Thank you.
This legislation does not eliminate local access television. It does not take money away from cities and towns, and it does not give one company an unfair advantage. It does, on the other hand, streamline the cable franchising procedure, giving the state government control over an industry that has used the loose control of town governments to run rampant. This legislation updates outdated rules that keep real competition from the consumer. This legislation means cutting-edge jobs and infrastructure for this state. I urge the passage of this legislation to spur competition, encourage investment, and advance technological innovation in the state. Thank you.
I didn't hear one municipal official talk today about the workforce and about their citizens that live and work in their own community and their ability to afford to live there. I would say to you, my final closing remark would be, you can't be pro-union and against this legislation. This is important for working people in this Commonwealth. Non-union people right there, Mr. Chairman. people, Comcast people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
When we return, cable access and its future under what Verizon hopes is a state-controlled, not locally controlled, franchising process.
One would think you don't need 2 studios or 2 sets of cameras. You need a way to share the costs of that. So, assessing a neutral fee on all customers of all providers is a way for everybody to share and underwrite that cost. So that's how it works, is everyone would have the same fees going to the same place to support the same equipment and studio and local access programming.
Throughout our state, local control of cable works. It means 95% of Massachusetts homes have access to cable. Local control means schools and libraries, police and firehouses, and some nonprofits like Boys and Girls Clubs get free service. That's why officials across the state support keeping it local. But some want to take away local control of cable TV and give it to corporate executives. Visit this website to learn how you can help keep local control.
The consequence of this legislation is that the next provider to come into Wilmington will be going through this process, and it will essentially have a cascade effect on the existing licenses. So there's nothing to say Comcast would not come back and look to remove itself from some of the requirements that were imposed in their license. One of those requirements is the 5% of gross annual revenue. If they were able to move that back to the 1%, that would reduce our local access corporation's annual funding by about $224,000, or 80% of their funding. Certainly they're not going to be able to provide the services in terms of coverage of school events, board meetings, and so on that they do now with an 80% funding cut.
Welcome back to Perspectives. I'm Carl Sagal. Senate Bill 1975, before the Massachusetts legislature, will alter cable franchising mechanism in your community, taking it from local control to state government control. The bill's sponsor, Verizon, says it's necessary to ease the path to the multiple municipalities they seek to wire for cable TV. There is language in the bill that is troubling for the cable access stations, and that's what brought out hundreds of cable access station employees and volunteers to the State House hearing for Senate Bill 1975.
You've heard a lot of the arguments. Presently today, I'm the chairman, the president of cable access in the town of Somerset. We really only get 3% of the deal there, and I'm opposed to this bill. But I think it's a great vehicle, at least to talk about a number of things. One, what is it all about with the franchise fee? Is there going to be a fair playing field when you do negotiate a contract? We happen to have one for 10 years, so we're relatively safe as I come here. But, there are a number of things that we've done and we have to work at. I, for one, would love to see this committee entertain the idea of cable access being able to advertise like Channel 2 does, and to make some money on that. We're prohibited from doing that. We're prohibited from doing a lot of things in the present contract. It's not that Verizon is going to give us a better deal, but I happen to be opposed to the bill. And as I said to the chairman of Ways and Means going up the aisle, at least it's a point of negotiation to at least look at things. But, in my opinion, I'd definitely be opposed to the bill. I have to be opposed. I haven't been up here in 4 years, Mike. I got lost in traffic trying to get here. On my right is the executive director, Joanne Brault, of the station in Somerset. And on my left is he should be on my right. They should switch. He should be on my right. She should be on my left. John Caridi is the chairman of the advisory board. Is it advisory board?
Cable Advisory.
Cable Advisory Board, and I'm the president of the Access Board. It's a nonprofit corporation that we've set up. I don't know how many have been set up around the state. But it's a tough deal to do, but we love doing it. So, in my opinion, Mr. Chairman and the members of the committee, take a look at the bill. Maybe you can make some change, but you can't take the bill as is because it really isn't favoring the industry and the access. Because the dangers to that is if the access is destroyed for any reason, and I kind of funny as I follow this issue, this morning's Globe is telling us that the bill is not a necessity. Yesterday it was, today it isn't. You got to get your ducks in a row here. But I'm opposed to the bill. I hope the committee would think about that.
Good morning. My name is John Claridi. I'm chairman of the Cable Advisory Committee in Somerset, and I've been asked by the Board of Selectmen to come before you to let you know that the town of Somerset is 100% for cable competition. However, we're 110% against this bill for a number of reasons, such as it does not require the new company to come in and build out the entire community. Basically, it can redline neighborhoods, which is a bad situation. We have a problem in the PEG area from the Board of Selectmen's point of view. The current proposal says that you can have up to 3 PEG channels if you have 50,000 population or more. If you're under 50,000, you're limited. We're 17,000 plus or minus, and we have 3 channels now. We'd lose a channel, which is not fair. We also have in our license, much like many of the communities with Comcast, a level playing field clause. And it really makes us wonder if somebody comes in with less requirements than Comcast, is there going to be litigation? And if so, who's going to be responsible for paying any judgments? Will it be the community, who had nothing to do with this, or will it be the Commonwealth who will have to pay any judgments as a result of a law that contradicts many of the licenses? And the last thing that I want to touch on, very simply, is definitions. If you look at the definition of gross revenue in this bill, it is nothing like the definition that's accepted by Comcast and other cable companies. It only has 2 or 3 of the same provisions. So with a 1% cap on PEG, which is based upon revenue, gross revenue, it virtually wipes out PEG, no matter how you look at it. And the selectmen in the town of Somerset, as I pointed out, are adamantly against this particular bill for those reasons and the other reasons that are outlined in our written testimony.
To get some background on how the Verizon bill may affect your cable access station, we decided to go right to where it began. Alex DiNatale reports from Somerville and the SCAT cable access station.
Thank you, Carl. As Massachusetts' first cable access station, once again Somerville is leading the way in opposition to the Verizon bill.
If this bill went through, there'd be all sorts of damage to community communications, not just public access, but certainly public access. Many municipalities would lose funding for their iNets and for other communication uses. They would lose control over customer service in their towns. But in terms of the public access channels, many towns could see the number of channels they have go down. Certainly we would lose funding. I'm sure of that, because here in Somerville we get a fairly substantial capital grant which allows us to keep up to date with our equipment and our facilities. Without that money, everything would start breaking down. We'd have to get the cheaper and cheaper stuff, and the quality of the programming would go down. Here in Somerville, at SCAT, which is the public access channel, we have 4 full-time staff, 1 part-time staff, and we're able to do a lot of community service programming. We produce programs about the arts in Somerville. We do political programs. We do social service programs that allows nonprofits to get their words out, and we try to reach out to a lot of the immigrant groups here in the city. Without the funding continuing, we would not be able to do all of this. And I think it would really impact the quality of life in the city.
I'm going to set an end point.
As the first nonprofit cable access station in the state, SCAT, Somerville Cable Access, is not only a leader in cable access television, its blueprint is followed by your own access station. Wendy Blom, the executive director of Somerville's SCAT, brought a solid contingency to the hearing for House Bill 1975, the Verizon Cable Franchising Bill.
Somerville was very well represented at the hearing. Besides Mayor Joe Curtatone, who gave the I think the best speech of the day, our state representative Denise Provo was there, and our state senator Pat Jalen, and both of them spoke really eloquently about how the community uses public access TV, and it just made me feel so good. They were so sincere and just really recognized the value to the community. And then the mayor's speech was very impassioned and very honest, and I think he really spoke to the really bad parts of the bill and how it would impact communities all over Massachusetts. and I think he made a great impression.
For Wendy Blum and your access station, the hearing for Senate Bill 1975 was a reminder of how important cable access is for your community, with the elected officials across the state making that reminder open and direct.
It was so wonderful at the hearing to hear all of those elected officials who came, both mayors, selectmen, and legislators, who were speaking about the importance of public access. You don't usually get that, and sometimes we feel very isolated in our little community access stations, and we don't really know what impact we're having. And that hearing was just very heartwarming for me.
For Perspectives, I'm Alex DiNatale.
If you're concerned free speech through your local cable access station will be compromised, or even eliminated through the passage of Massachusetts Senate Bill 1975, we urge you to have your voice heard. First, you can talk to your local state representative and senator and urge them not to support the Verizon cable franchise bill. If you need help with information, we urge you to visit these websites. These sites have comprehensive, up-to-date information on what can be done to help your community keep local control of cable franchising and assure that your local cable access station continues to be the reliable source for your city or town's democracy in action. We hope you've enjoyed and have been informed by this program. Thank you for watching. For Alex DiNatale, I'm Carl Sagal. Have a good day.
This morning you've heard from various panelists and individual speakers this morning about their view of what's in the bill, and I'm sort of here to sort of talk about the facts. There has been a lot of misinformation, some of it quoted this morning, about allegations of what's in the bill and what's not. And I suppose sitting here, I'm not surprised because our opponents on this bill are in the entertainment business and evidently, in the fiction in particular. So, sorry. See, you can see, bring up sound effects.
This issue is not whether a state office will have 15 days or 15 months to approve an application for a state authorization. The issue is that the cable licensing process has both great value and direct impact on a municipality and its residents. It is only the cities and towns, and not, with due respect, a state agency that fully comprehends the intricacies and impact of what we refer to under the Federal Cable Act as cable-related community needs and interests. I urge this committee to reject this attempt to eliminate localism, negotiation, and public interest from the cable licensing process. It's one thing to still have thousands of double poles in the Commonwealth. It's another thing to destroy local democracy itself. Whether that democracy is the cable licensing process or the public, educational, and government programming produced in these large cities and towns in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. My last comment is why. Why do we need such a bill when the City of Marlborough has recently gone through this process and we did it just fine?
I do not buy the claim that Verizon needs this in order to have competition. We successfully have negotiated our own contract with Comcast 2 years ago, of which we were able to get $900,000 in capital money to build our first institutional network combining all of our municipal facilities, including all of the schools in the city of Attleboro, as well as almost 5% of the gross annual proceeds to be able to give them back to form our own cable corporation, which truly has had a great impact, an enormous impact on our entire community.
I'm here to reinforce what others have said. I think this bill is anti-democratic, it's anti-volunteer, it's anti-competition, and it's unnecessary. It's anti-democratic for all the reasons that you've heard about the importance of PEG access and the effects that this bill would have on PEG access, which is vital to the local democratic process. It's anti-volunteer, and many of the people who are sitting behind me, I'm sure, are volunteers for the local PEG access corporations. It is largely volunteers who put all of that material on the air, which helps our democratic process.
I am very supportive of the MMA's position and the position of the municipalities across the Commonwealth in that what we have is working. That we have, for instance, in the town of Shrewsbury, and you'll hear from our public access director, Bill May, that talks about the fact that we have some of the lowest cable rates in our area, that we provide wonderful services in terms of public access and choice and opportunities for our local communities.
And we, the citizens of this great Commonwealth, we will lose access, we will lose funding, we will lose quality of service, we will lose a major resource for education and emergency alerts, and most importantly, Because local cable access keeps its finger on the pulse of local government, we will lose a vital link to our democracy.